These they're in the they're in the thing. But that is very nice. I am resident of Colorado. This is Butch RosenBalm. We are here with Wyatt Earp and Tombstone for our Western movie series. So, Butch, when did you first see Wyatt Earp and Tombstone?
I saw Tombstone on VHS, mid late 90s. Uh, I've said to you and on these videos several times my love of Kurt Russell. So, here comes Snake Plissken. Sure, okay. And I really liked it. I mentioned to you, I didn't used to really like Westerns as much. And I was like, wow, this is really good. I really liked it. But at the time, I knew Wyatt Earp was famous. I knew about the gunfight at the OK Corral, and that was it. So I wanted to know more than what Tombstone taught me. And a few years later, maybe I read it online somewhere that Wyatt Earp told him more.
Yeah. Here, I'll take it. I'm sorry. So, I'm recording, honey. I'm recording. You go in the living room. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're good. So I really wanted to hunt Wyatt Earp down. So not exactly. I saw Wyatt Earp back when I lived with my cousin. So 2000, 2001, 2002.
Yeah, I saw Tombstone first, and I saw it about 1995. So I saw this movie 2 years later after it came out, and then Wyatt Earp I hadn't seen until 1999 because I heard about it, but it's one of those movies I could not find on TV, and anytime I'd go to a rental store, because rental stores were still in it, it was always out. And then when I saw it on TV, I found out why it was always out because it's so good. And you'll get movies like that too, where back then when the rental stores were booming, you'd go and you'd be like, oh, that movie's always out, and that would be Wyatt Earp or Tombstone too. But I kept asking for Wyatt Earp because I'd seen Tombstone. So therefore, when I watched it, here's two films, both about the life of Wyatt Earp. Now, there's differences, but the fact you have two movies about one real life lawman, they really do a great job of not being the same film.
Yes, very much so. As we talk about these movies, and I'm watching them, and I'm thinking about questions you might ask, things to bring up. To me, Tombstone is the legend, and Wyatt Earp is the actual man.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, I was reading some of the reviews of Wyatt Earp, and I was really surprised because Roger Ebert. I usually I agree with Roger Ebert, or at least I could see what he would say, or I could follow. And he hated it. He said it was very, um, it was directionless. I believe is the term he used. I'm like, what? What? I don't agree with it. It's slow, like a lot of Costner westerns are, and it takes getting where it's going and telling its story, but directionless or whatever term he used, no, I disagree with that totally.
Yeah. I'll say this, because you had mentioned this too prior, that Wyatt Earp is about his life story, sort of. Where Tombstone, like you said, it's about the legend. Wyatt Earp is about the man, because you get more of a family. You get to learn a little more about his family with Wyatt Earp. You get why the way Wyatt Earp is the way Wyatt Earp is. And it's really interesting that you learn that he was married and that his wife had died of some sort of, I don't know what illness, I guess. And it was really just disheartening to see this legendary lawman have the way, watch his wife die, and he goes to pieces over it. What did you think of that?
I believe it was cholera. I might be making that up, but I thought she passed of cholera. Yeah, at the beginning of Tombstone, Kurt Russell comes out of the train. They're like, martial art. I'm retired. Already he's famous. Already he's well known, and already they're trying to get him. Why? Because I was like, okay, what did he do? I mean, like I said at the beginning of this video, I knew he was famous, and Wyatt Earp, he comes up. He's a kid. He falls in love with that woman. They get married. Aurelia, I believe is how you say her name. They get married. She gets pregnant. She catches a fever. Like I said, I think it's cholera, but don't quote me on that. And she dies, and he falls to pieces. And as soon as the funeral's over with, he goes, at least in the movie, burns their house down.
Yeah.
Basically goes on like a 6-month bender, drinking, and we eventually find out he beats this man up, steals his money, steals his horse, gets caught, and then his dad shows up and basically pays his bond. Wyatt Earp skips out of town, and honestly, I think it's one of the reasons a lot of people don't like this film, because this is more about the man, the if you will, the real story, or at least a version of the real story. And it's not like this guy right here who never fails. Tombstone, which Tombstone to me is. This is Wyatt Earp. The film is about a man who's flawed.
I think here's the thing too, and yes, Tombstone is accurate to a degree, and Wyatt Earp is accurate. I would say Wyatt Earp's a little more accurate than Tombstone, but I'll say there are inaccuracies in both films.
Oh yeah.
Now, there's a moment too where they say that Wyatt Earp, there's warrants out for Earp's arrest. That's actually true. Not only is it true, up until till near the end of his life, there were warrants out for his arrest for what happened in Tombstone. I mean, so to say Wyatt Earp was sort of on both sides of the law isn't inaccurate. He was. And that's sort of, there are people who might not know that, just because when you watch a movie, you really get enthralled with the action. But what did you think of the opening of Tombstone? They have, what's the actor's name? Mitchell something.
Robert Mitchum doing the narration?
Yeah.
It tied in. I've not been able to determine, or I've tried to do some research online and in my various books. As far as I can tell, the whole red sash thing with the cowboys is just made up for that film.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong. If I am, feel free to leave us a comment.
Yeah.
But it drew an interesting parallel between, say, the Bloods and the Cribs, which I believe at the time were probably the two best known gangs. One was red and one was blue.
Yeah.
Plus, that helps identify. Just I wore this shirt just because I just put it on. I didn't mean to. I'm already referencing it twice now, but it's a symbol,
Right.
just like sashes are, and it helps people like me at the time that didn't know much about Wyatt Earp. You automatically know. You see a red sash, it's a bad guy.
It's weird you said it, because in Wyatt Earp they don't wear red sashes. Now, I do think that's a little more accurate. Here's what I'll say. I looked up a picture of back then, and I only saw one person where it was like, I guess you could call it a sash, but it was so, I don't know what the context of the picture is. You know what I mean? It's like that picture could have just been taken and he happened to be wearing it, So, like, it's like when you or I take a picture, it's like we don't always pick out exact attire. Just gotta throw this on and the hell with it. But I do think there could have been just that. And I will say that, so I more think that Wyatt Earp was correct on this, that there weren't really wearing red sashes, in my opinion.
Right. They knew whose team they were on, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing Wyatt Earp and Tombstone do both get across really well, that behind was, in both sort of movies, he's portrayed as crooked, I don't know the real story behind. I more know because anytime I hear stories about Tombstone, they more get into yes, behind was inaccurate, but they don't ever say he was corrupt.
Right.
They do say that now the Earps didn't necessarily. There were certain things that the Earps didn't do wrong, but there's things that they didn't do right either. Like we'll get into the blood trail, but because both movies get into that more Tombstone than Earp a bit, but with this, they with Wyatt Earp they tell the story of mentioned his wife, but they really tell a story how he was a referee for boxing matches, and I didn't know that.
I'd heard that later, of course. Um, and he's a buffalo hunter. That's where he met the Mastersons, Bat and Ed.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about the fighting referee is apparently they come in, they say, "Hey, there's gonna be another fight. You gonna referee?" He's like, "Well, I don't know. Last time they didn't like my call." It's like, and he stops the fight and to save the guy that's obviously losing. And this guy comes up and slugs him, knocks him out. That's twice you've cost me money, blah blah blah. So kind of let it go. Later that night, of course, so of course, what comes up? That same guy comes out. Wyatt Earp, one of Wyatt's friends was that guy. He was going to get him, and then the guy shows up. He's like, "I hear you're looking for me." And he's like, "Buddy, no, you're but And he won't take no for an answer. Wyatt takes one of the pool balls and hits him in the throat.
Yeah.
And while that guy's in the floor, he comes up, takes his gun belt, and he's like, "This man came calling for me." Gun. But the dog walks out, and it's just like one of the things, one of the images I think Wyatt Earp, the real man, and the character is this just super gunslinging, shoot the gun out of your hand, which anybody that knows anything about guns, that's BS.
Yeah.
He wasn't a big gunslinger. Kurt Russell says in Tombstone, "Look, I was only in one gunfight in all of Kansas City,
Yeah.
Dodge City," and he was known for what they called erping, which is when he takes the gun and will crack it over their head.
Yeah.
Gunslinger. So I always thought that was an interesting way to show that yes, it was a time for guns, and he was a gunslinger in the Old West, blah blah blah. But that wasn't necessarily he wasn't like going around shooting people straight between the eyes every time you turn around.
Well, one thing that both movies sort of get into more so Wyatt Earp than Tombstone is Wyatt Earp forced the law of no carrying guns within city limits. Like you weren't allowed to carry guns unless you were a man, but you had to turn into firearms. And that law also applied in they put that law in Tombstone as well. And I think it's in both films, by the way. It's in Wyatt Earp and in Tombstone. So Wyatt Earp always enforced the law of you weren't allowed to carry firearms. And you're right. The movie Wyatt Earp really helps out Tombstone in a weird way where if you hadn't watched Wyatt Earp and you hear Wyatt Earp say Kurt Russell's Wyatt Earp say, I was only ever in one gunfight, because he's telling his one brother, you don't want to know what it feels like to take a man's life. And when you hear that, you're sort of, when I first heard that, I was sort of perplexed by that too. But then when you watch Wyatt Earp, which is historically accurate, it's showing you what that meant. That he would take, like you said, he would take his gun and just bash someone over the head, or as one of his brothers would, which is really interesting. And then they would arrest them. But would he shoot somebody? Yeah, he would. But he was more in favor of knocking them unconscious as opposed to just killing somebody, because he didn't want to kill somebody. And I think that's something it gets
comes across, maybe he's a little, and they even talk about it in the film Wyatt Earp, some people think you're a little quick to lay the gun down on a man. It's like, well, his choices are let me whack you over the head with my gun or kill you.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to go for being knocked out if that's the only choice I have.
You can get whacked over the head and spend the night in jail, or you can get shot and be killed. I want option A, Mr. U.S. Marshal, sir. And I think the one thing Tombstone does really well is they're because, like you've talked about, it's more at the end of the legend than the beginning. Like the Wyatt Earp, to me, Wyatt Earp's the full story. And I know that it is the same way to you. That he walks right over to the Orient. And who's in there? Billy Bob Thornton.
According to Wikipedia, all of Billy Bob's dialogue there was ad lib.
Yeah.
They told him, here you're playing and you're kind of a jerk, and all of that is ad lib. And if it is, that's just great, because that's a great scene with Billy Bob.
It really is, and you can't tell it's ad lib either because their chemistry's good. Like he's smacking him and he's smacking him, and it's just like then he kicks him out and he tells the bartender, and he says, I forget the number he says about the percentage of the house.
Didn't sound fair or something like that.
Yeah. And then
he has one of the great lines early on. You want to do something or just stand there and bleed?
Yeah.
It's just what? Well, I'm just like, he might not be playing Snake Plissken, but I can believe Snake Plissken is a descendant of Wyatt Earp.
Yeah, I heard Wyatt Earp. I heard Kurt Russell took over direction of this film in a way.
Yeah, I've heard that repeatedly. Apparently, the George Katsamotis, I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, the man that's alleged to direct Tombstone, apparently he was either getting behind, he wasn't well. I've read a couple of different things, and Kurt stepped in and directed scenes. Val Kilmer backs him up, though Michael Beam, who plays Johnny Ringo in Tombstone, said that Kurt never directed him in the scene. He didn't say it didn't happen. He just said Kurt didn't direct him. And eventually, the deal was Kurt wouldn't tell anybody because George was alive, and then like 10 years it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'll admit it, yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool though. What that might be is Michael Bean may have just never been directed by Kurt Russell, and that is possible. That happens in movies where somebody else is directing you. Now, I will say with Wyatt Earp, because there's going to be an interesting comparison here. With Wyatt Earp, we have Dennis Quaid playing Doc Holliday, and with Tombstone, we obviously have Val Kilmer playing Doc Holliday. So, who's the better Doc in your opinion?
Dennis Quaid.
Tell me why.
When I saw Tombstone, like I said, I saw it first. Like everybody, I enjoyed it, Val Kilmer's. But the more I watched it, it was kind of over the top. Kind of campy. Sorry, Patrick. Not in a good way. And it's just like, for me, the lines that Val Kilmer has to say, "You're a good woman," or "You could be the devil," or however that line goes. They don't hold up under repeated viewing. When I was watching Wyatt Earp, I remember I was watching it, like I said, at my cousin's house. We used to share a house because her husband traveled a lot, and I kept hitting the information.
Yeah.
Who's playing Doc Holliday? Sorry, but I told you I wasn't feeling good. In my
Take your time. Yeah, and Wyatt
by Dennis Quaid, amazed, and he lost, like, I remember reading, like maybe 40, 50 pounds to play Doc Holliday, and he just, to me, that is Doc Holliday. If I could take one person out of one film and put him in the other, I take out Dennis Quaid and put him in Tombstone.
I will say this before I give my answer. During the blood trail, the blood ride.
The Vendetta?
Yeah, the Vendetta ride. For the death of Johnny Ringo, I got a newsflash for all those fine folks out there. Doc Holliday was not there. By this time, Doc Holliday was too sick and was in Colorado because he had tuberculosis. That's the one thing both movies get wrong. Doc Holliday did not kill Johnny Ringo. In all likelihood, I would say Johnny Ringo committed suicide. Because the one thing Wyatt Earp gets right with the Vendetta ride is Johnny Ringo did die near water. He dies in a canyon, but it's near water. But I don't think Wyatt Earp shot him, and I damn sure know Doc Holliday couldn't have shot him. I just think Johnny Ringo did not want to look over his shoulder the rest of his life, and took his own.
Yeah, I totally agree. From everything I've read, the first time I was reading about it, and for those of you that don't know, I think he was on the run, and maybe days or weeks later, somebody came along and found him like next to a tree, dead from one shot, and nobody had any, knowledge of what would happen. It does make for a good story, like in Tombstone, with Doc showing up and that whole scene. But yeah, that's as amusing and interesting and as good as that scene is. Though I'd still like to think that Doc was in Colorado at the sanitarium, got on a horse, drove all the way down to wherever Ringo was, shot him, and then rode all the way back to Colorado, because it's the greatest alibi of all time. I
like that, Butch. Here's what I'll say. I love both. I will go a little more with Val Kilmer. I will say this. I think Dennis Quaid's is a little more accurate with the costume, because there is, in books, there is Doc Holliday did wear sunglasses. So I will give Dennis Quaid a lot of credit, because I do think he did the more accurate portrayal of the character in full form. I think that's something Quaid doesn't get enough credit for. Yes, Doc Holliday did have a very short temper. That's also where him and Big Nose Kate are fighting. But now, the one thing that both films hint to it, but they don't actually show it. Doc Holliday never murdered somebody in front of other people. He always did his stuff in private, we'll say. That's something the history books do mention. Like, though people believe Doc Holliday was the fastest straw, no one can verify it.
That's probably, I think the people that saw it couldn't talk about it.
Right, they're dead. But that's the one thing that I think both movies sort of take liberties with. That, I think it's done. I think Doc Holliday, with his gunplay, is more done at times, except for the OK Corral, because yes, Doc Holliday was there for that. By the way, he got shot during the OK Corral scene historically. That yes, he was there for the OK Corral, but there's things where, like I said, he wasn't there for the Johnny Ringo thing. But so with both movies, I think they take liberties with the gunplay of Doc Holliday at times.
It's a Western film, and you expect a big shootout, and everybody, knows. So yeah, it's kind of like you got to give them a little bit of what everybody's looking for. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. I know Val Kilmer is immensely more popular as Doc Holliday than Dennis Quaid, and to me, shame. I'm not trying to shame Val Kilmer. I'm not I speak ill. I just think Dennis Quaid deserves so much more credit for what he did, and I mean he looks to me like a man that would kill you, and just if you made him, he's not going to just kill you for no reason.
Yeah, I think that's the thing too with Tombstone. You do get the sense that Doc and Wyatt knew each other, but with Wyatt Earp, you get to actually see when they first met, because Wyatt Earp's looking for Dave Rudabaugh.
Mm-hmm.
And Doc Holliday hates Dave Rudolph. But
And I've thought of ending his life myself several times.
my judgment got the better of me, unfortunately.
It hurts to do that voice.
I, I think it hurt Dennis Quaid too.
Probably did, but that that really, I think that really is one of the best acting jobs he's done in his entire life.
Yeah. He he has really good movies. I think he gets at times a little too criticized because it's like, look, not everybody's going to go on to be a big star, right?
Right.
That's the thing. Like Dennis, when you think of Dennis Quaid, he's not the biggest star, but he is a good actor. He knows what he's doing, and his I agree with you. His performance of Doc Holliday is really underrated. I have to ask you this question: what did you think of because there no actor like brother wise with the Earps is in either film, which is great. We were talking about how these films are, though they're about Wyatt Earp, they're both they're different, which is nice. So you have Michael Madsen who's playing Virgil, and in the other you have Sam Elliott who's playing Virgil in Tombstone. Um, oh, what's his name? The guy who played was in Twister. Bill Pack, yeah, Bill Paxton is in Tombstone. He's one of the Earp brothers. So, what did you think? Who had the better cast when it comes to the Earp brothers? You think?
I'm sure the popular answer is Tombstone. My answer is going to continue to be Wyatt Earp.
Yeah.
Just because there's more. Wyatt Earp had more than two or three brothers, however many they mentioned in Tombstone.
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny. Mike Madsen, I feel like he was kind of auditioning for Kill Bill in this film, even though that was years away. I'm not overly fond of Sam Elliott as part of my problem.
Yeah.
He's a lot of people. I'm like,
Man.
I put up with, and
But
sorry.
I could not hear you at all when you were talking there for a while.
Let me scoot up a little bit. I think Wyatt Earp has the better brothers, just because I'm not overly fond of Sam Elliott.
Right.
I know I'm not, and you can talk about Wyatt's brothers in Wyatt Earp.
Yeah.
And you have Jim Caviezel, I believe how you say his name, that played Jesus in the Mel Gibson film, Passion of the Christ. Plays a younger brother. I think it's his first. Probably more interesting in Tombstone, but there's more of them, and they do more. And the guy that plays the younger brother, Morgan, and Wyatt Earp, Lyndon Ashby, who went on to play Johnny Cage in the Mortal Kombat first series of films. He has one of my favorite scenes in there. Bill Pullman, who gets it confused with Bill Paxton a lot, who's in Bill Pullman's in Wyatt Earp, and he's like, well, there's a lot of people saying, Wyatt, that a lot of them, they don't like you. And Morgan's like, well, who said? He goes, I like him, and Virgil likes him, and I like him, and it just kind of turns into this comedy routine. The brothers and Wyatt Earp were more complete people. Yeah. They aren't, no offense, characters.
Yeah.
Where kind of character, but like I said, Tombstone is the myth. Wyatt Earp is more about the man.
I think Tombstone, a lot of people favor Tombstone.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm with you on this. I think Wyatt, if you're looking for a complete portrayal, not just of Wyatt Earp, but his brothers, then Wyatt Earp's the movie for you. And it really is. I mean, they do a great job of telling you the story of him, the relationship with his brothers, why the relationship is, because Gene Hackman, who is in this movie, who plays his dad, says there's nothing more important than family, more than blood. Everyone else is just strangers. And that sort of tells you why Wyatt Earp.
The theme of the film, Wyatt Earp.
Yeah, it really is. And really, I said previously, Wyatt Earp helps Tombstone. with that line that Gene Hackman says playing Wyatt Earp's father, it helps Tombstone too, because you understand why both Wyatt Earps the way they are, even though you're not getting with Kurt Russell's, you're not getting Wyatt Earp till way the end, the legend, like you said, the end of his career, the end of his story, if you will. And I think that's where Wyatt Earp really makes up for a lot of that, where you're getting the full story of the man and his family and why things happen the way they did. I think, I know I'm going to get help. Is Wyatt Earp the better movie? Yes, in a way, it's a better story. What's the more entertaining movie? Tombstone.
Of course. Yeah. I was reading again Wikipedia, so a big old grain of salt. That allegedly, when they were starting to film Tombstone, they went to Kevin Costner to potentially play Wyatt Earp, and they had creative differences, so to speak. So then left, and that's actually what Tombstone got Kurt Russell, and then Kevin Costner wanted to do a Wyatt Earp film, and he wanted to tell the whole story, so he got with Lawrence Kasdan, and that's we have these dueling movies as they call it. We've kind of touched on it. I want to hit something real quick. Both of these films have so many great actors in them, just amazing cast all the way through. Every time I watch it, I'll see somebody know. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot they were in this film. Both of them. I mean, just it's amazing how many good actors are in both films.
Yeah, actually, there is a Dark Shadows actor in Wyatt Earp. Joanna Goings, who played Victoria Winters in the revival, is in Wyatt Earp.
She plays Josie.
Yes, she does. I actually like her performance as Josie. Really well done. Because, again, it's giving you more of a complete story of her, too. They both sort of met. Well, he in Wyatt Earp, they say he met Josie in Dodge City, that's where he first saw her, but he fell in love with her really in Tombstone, and I think both movies do that really. So there's not really a big change there, a big difference, but Booth Powers is in Tombstone, really great actor. I mean, if you have not seen Deadwood, what the hell are you waiting for? Like, if me and Butch have to come to your house and tie you up, we will.
I won't. I'll just tell you, man, you're wasting your time if you're not watching Dead. If you like westerns, if you like my dad, I don't think my dad would like it, but due to the language and some of the. But if you're, I don't know, I'm in my 50s. If you didn't grow up on John Wayne and Randolph Scott, you should, and they try so hard to be historically accurate.
Yeah.
But it is not for kids.
No.
It's family friendly. And Al Swearingen is one of the greatest characters in that, played by Ian McShane, who was one of the greatest actors of all time. We completely sidetracked.
Did you ever hear Ian McShane's interview where he said the scripts always kept changing because the writer would sit down and he'd watch the actors move around and talk, so they were always getting new scripts all the time. Ian McShane talks about that. It's an amazing interview if no one's ever seen it. I know Butch has seen it, but it's, again, Deadwood's a great show. Go watch it. But what did you think of both versions of the Shootout at the OK Corral?
I was hoping you'd bring that up because I was thinking, as I told you, I didn't rewatch Tombstone recently because I've seen it enough. I don't have to rewatch it. And I've seen Wyatt Earp enough, but I wanted to watch it again, see if I still liked it. And I was watching the fight. I actually did watch the gunfight on YouTube for Tombstone. I think about Tombstone, I think about Wyatt Earp, Hour of the Gun by John Sturges, Gunfight at OK Corral with John Sturges. And it's kind of funny. And I've actually even read most of the testimony on the trial regarding the gunfight at the OK Corral. And it's so interesting how the four films how they tell it slightly from different ways, but they all tell the same story.
Yeah.
Dramatic, theatrical gunfight where Wyatt Earp is a little more down and dirty.
Yeah.
Again, they tell the same story, but though it's funny, and the things I noticed on my own, as they're walking to the fight, Doc Holliday comes up, both films, Bert a shotgun, double barrel shotgun, and Doc Holliday's walking up with his cane. Well, Bert and Doc switch. In Tombstone, Kurt Russell says, well, they'll be more likely to listen with Doc on how holding the street cannon. This is double barrel shotgun, and he's shooting it. I don't know, one of the McLauries or whoever, and the guy's hiding behind a horse.
Yeah.
Of course, the horse goes crazy, and then he shoots him. Well, then he shoots him for a third time.
Yeah.
He must have got that at the John Wayne store. At the time, only had 2 shots, so he shot 3 shots out of a 2-shot gun. I always kind of wrote it off is because the way it happens, you see him shoot, and then it's from a different angle where he's shooting, trying to get my hands in so you can see the difference. And I just took it as, we see the shot from a different angle. It doesn't matter. I used to be that guy that would count shots out of a 6-shooter. It's like, who cares?
He got that gun at the Double Barrels on Us store. Well, it's like in Halloween 2, Sam Loomis has a 6-shooter and he fires 7 shots. It's like there must have been that magical bullet in there.
I got a really obscure one for you. If you've ever seen The Rifleman with Chuck Connors.
Yes.
Whatever that rifle is, I think it's a Winchester. However many shots it can hold, if you watch the very beginning where it's down, 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 and then he goes, The Rifleman. However many sound effects they put in, it's one too many.
Yeah. My grandfather
shot, he does 13. I get it's so minor, but it's kind of funny.
My grandfather said that to me when he had me watch The Rifleman when I was a kid, and he's like, they're going to shoot too many shots. I was like, what? And then when it opened up, I was like shocked because I didn't never see it before. And he's like, yeah, it doesn't hold that many bullets.
but now he only does the motion. He does the motion the right number of times. It's just one too many sound effects.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. He said they overplayed it for some reason. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
so I had heard that from my grandfather. He's like, yeah, you got to watch this show. It's good. I was like, okay. But
one thing about the gunfight, and this is historically accurate in both films, Wyatt doesn't get shot. He is the only person. And in both films, he's standing out in front.
Yeah.
And both films make a point about basically showing when it comes to these gangs, be it the Clantons, the Cowboys, or even the Earps, if you cut the head, so to speak, Wyatt for the Earps, what's his name? Powers Booth. Can't think of his name. The real man's name. If you cut off either one of those heads, the body will probably die. So I think they're all like shooting at Wyatt, and somehow they all miss him. All 2 brothers and Doc get hit. All the Cowboys get hit except for what's his name? God, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting names left and right. Whoever the cowboy is that runs off. It's not Stillwell, but because he's like, I got no gun, and that was one of the big defenses in the inquest about the shooting. And it's like, they're trying to portray Wyatt as this gun crazy, Punisher from the comics, and it's like they point to him not shooting Ike Clanton. That's who it is.
Ike Clanton, yeah.
If he wanted to kill, if he was just there to kill the Clantons, he would have killed Ike. And Ike didn't have a gun. Ike closed up his hands. I got no gun. And Wyatt responds in history. Fight commence. You get commenced to fight and get out of here. That's not the exact quote, and he throws him away. Yeah. If he just killed him, he could have killed them right there, but he didn't. So
the character Booth Powers plays is Curly Bill.
Bill Brocious, thank you.
Yeah. And what's interesting, you're right, Ike Clanton. I'm not armed. I don't have a gun. I don't have a gun. And he always runs actually in a train station for Tombstone. That's where you see Wyatt Earp come up. And he has like, you tell him I'm coming and hell's coming with me, which is the greatest line in probably in Western history.
I was waiting on you if you want to ask me my favorite scenes in Tombstone. It is, you tell him I'm coming and hell's coming with me, because every time when Kurt Russell says that, cold chills run down my back. Mm-hmm. And he has this look, and this is a man who's been pushed too far.
No.
As the song goes, you've woken up the demon in him. And that's what leads to the Earp Vendetta ride into. But that is my favorite scene in Tombstone and it calls back at the beginning of the film. There's a Catholic priest talking about Revelations and a man on a pale horse, and those they called him death, and hell followed with him. And he even says, I'm coming and hell's coming with me. It's just, that is one of the greatest lines. That's one of the greatest scenes, and that's my favorite scene in Tombstone.
What's your favorite scene in Wyatt Earp?
It's a very similar scene, but it's completely different.
Yeah.
If you've ever watched it on DVD, it's where they pause the two DVDs. It's when Wyatt comes back to Dodge City, and after he had tamed it, they threw him out. It went crazy. Not Bat, but the other Masterson brother gets killed. And they call him back, and he walks it, and they've got his brothers, and he walks into this saloon, shoots it, and he's like, my name is Wyatt Earp, and it all ends now. But it's not that rage that Kurt Russell shows. It's just quite, my name is Wyatt Earp, and it all ends now.
Yeah. One of my
facts.
My favorite scene in Wyatt Earp is when Wyatt Earp first gets to Dodge City, and the one guy's and he points to that stomach. He goes, I respect you, but if your men may shoot me down, but not before they see what you had for breakfast. And it is a great scene with Kevin Costner. My favorite one in Tombstone is after Wyatt Earp throws out Billy Bob Thornton's character, and Billy Bob Thornton's character is coming back with a gun, and then you hear Doc Holliday, why, Johnny Tyler?
Where you go with that shotgun? Doc, I didn't know you were back. I think my second favorite scene in Tombstone is the shootout with Johnny B. Hand, or not Johnny B. Hand, Curly Bill.
Yes.
They're shooting, and the bullets are going through Wyatt's coat, and he runs out and he throws the 6-stone down. He goes back to his horse, gets the shotgun, and then I don't want to make it sound like one of them slow motion. It's not that, but he does.
Yeah.
No, and it is slowed down, but it's not overly dramatic, and it just works great. And then right after Turkey Creek and Jack or Baker, you ever seen anything like that? Hell, I've never even heard of anything like that. It's just, and again, it's pretty accurate for the most part.
Val Kilmer's like he's walking on water.
Where's Wyatt? Down at the water. Down at the lake, walking on water. That is one of the lines of his that I really do like. Is him saying that, because it's like, okay, come on, guys, let's not canonize him yet.
Right. I'll say this too, that with Wyatt Earp, my other second favorite scene is the one. It's the one where we start off with when Wyatt Earp's just sitting in the saloon at Tombstone, and he says, let's go, because the whole movie builds up to that. builds up to that, getting to Tombstone in that scene, and it's really well done how they take you there, how Wyatt Earp, the movie Wyatt Earp, starts and gets you to Tombstone and gets you to the scene they started with is really a masterstroke, whereas Tombstone is more telling you, like you said, a story of the legend and at the end of the man's career, and it's really good. But I feel just, again, in my opinion, Wyatt Earp's the better movie.
I think this is the third straight Western we've talked about where the line "Let's go" is uttered.
Yeah.
Did that out with Wild Bunch, and it seems like it was in Man Who Shot Liberty Valance also. But yeah, when he goes, I do like that scene because he just goes, "Let's go." And as soon as he said that, I'm like, it's like a reoccurring theme now. Is every Western just got them going? Well, let's go. I tell you, I didn't realize I had two favorite scenes in each film. It's actually the last one in Wyatt Earp when we're talking about Tommy behind the deuce and he overawes the gang from not storming the prison and taking him and hanging him. He's like, yeah, you'll get me, but I'll get you, and I'll get you, and I'll get you, and I'll get. He's got 2 6 in. I'll get you, I'll get you, I'll get you, I'll get you, and however more I can get. And they're like, kind of going back to my point about killing the head and the body dies. Well, they go off, but I think it's actually the last line in the film. He's a steamliner with his, I guess, common law wife Josie. By that time, this is like early noughts, early 19 teens. And maybe even 1920s, and he looks at her and he goes, some people say it didn't happen that way, and she goes, never mind, Wyatt, it did. And I immediately flash back to Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, and when truth becomes legend, print the legend, and which again tied me back to Tombstone, because like I said, this is the legend. It's just us being Americans, our Wild West is one of our big legendary, and it's I don't want to say it's our only, but it's probably our most famous myth, myth of just America. So we have a lot of legends associated. I mean, how many films have Wyatt Earp as an actual character in it? I'm not even including like Bo Smith's Winona Earp, who is a descendant. I'm not talking about stuff like that. I'm talking about we're going to tell a story about Wyatt Earp or involves Wyatt Earp. How many are there?
My Darling Clementine, Hour of the Gun. I'm sure there's more.
Gunfight at the OK Corral.
Okay,
there's your 5 already. I mean, is My Darling Clementine, is that the one that's got Randolph Scott?
No, it's got Henry Vaughn.
Frontier Marshal is Randolph Scott playing Wyatt Earp.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. Like, there's so many Wyatt Earp movies, and that's the thing too. You have Young Guns, which is Billy the Kid. And by the way, there's been 21 Billy the Kid movies made. There's my least favorite, and I'm sure we'll get into it, is the story of Jesse Goddamn James. Because let me tell you, I don't buy for 1 second that Jesse was the mastermind of his own gang. His brother was. And I don't give a shit. If anybody wants to debate me, that come on here and I'll debate it with you. I remember in history class, little sidebar, when they were telling us the story of Jesse and Frank, well, my history teacher was telling us what happened. And I hear Frank gets pardoned by the government. He lists all the crimes Frank committed. And they're if not bad, but just as bad as Jesse's, if not worse. And it's like, you could sort of tell what really happened, that Frank gave Jesse up. That's my opinion, that Frank did.
I can see that. And here's the thing, here, talking about the mythology of the American West, the Wild West, I don't get into the Billy the Kid, Jesse, right, Frank, the James Younger gangs, all that BS, them being heroes and Robin Hood. It's like, Billy the Kid and Jesse James were probably not that far from psychopaths. I mean, admitted they had some horrible upbringing, some bad things happened in their life. I'm not trying to act like, they were just crazy persons, but and it's both of them right there in the middle, not that far removed from the Civil War, which the first modern war, right? That's what we need. But this, there's no, to me, Robin Hood.
Yeah.
Gives to the poor. Sheriff of Nottingham and whoever it is that he works for, they're bad guys. They're doing bad things. Not to say that the railroads weren't necessarily bad, and there was some horrible things that happened on both sides on the Civil War. So it's not like but I have never really, maybe I've just consciously, subconsciously always avoided how there's no Frank and Jesse and Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid was just a psycho, and they would, they would help their people out, but for some reason, just didn't translate as well. Maybe I didn't hear it at that time in my life.
No, I think first for the railroads, the best series you want to watch without connected to the West is Hell on Wheels, because it is a great Western TV show. But with Jesse James, the story of the James and the Younger brothers, there's always the story. Jesse was this cold-blooded killer, and yes, he was. I'm not disputing that. There is proof of that he was a killer, and there's proof that. But there's also, he was this Robin Hood. Let me tell you something. No, he wasn't. Jesse was giving money to not only to his family, and that's the thing too with the whole. The reason I don't like this story is not because of Jesse himself, but because they try to convince you that Robert Ford is always to be made the antagonist. Really, the real antagonist to me is not just really Robert Ford, but the law itself, because it's always an emphasis to get Jesse. Really, the reason what no film tells you, really, the only film that sort of hints at this, really, to me, is the assassination of Jesse James, told by the coward Robert Ford. What this is the only it gives a subtle hint that Frank perhaps sold Jesse out. It's very tiny. And here's the thing. I already figured that out when I was in 5th grade. It's like, hey, wait a second. This doesn't sound right. But sorry for the sidebar, everybody. But with the movie Wyatt Earp and Tombstone, what do you give both movies?
Tombstone is obviously the more popular.
Yes.
I think it's very welcoming to people who aren't familiar with the story. It's easy on the eyes. It doesn't ask a lot from you. It's kind of like being set up with an attractive person by a relative. You have a good time. You enjoy it. You go home. And Wyatt Earp is not that. Wyatt Earp demands more from you. You have to pay attention to it.
Yeah.
It's film, and like we said with the Open Range, it takes. Admitted, this isn't directed by Kevin Costner, but
he is producer on it, I believe.
He's producer, and I don't know. I kind of feel like he did have some influence on Lawrence Kasdan. It takes its time telling its story, but it tells it in its own time. And if you're willing to sit down and listen to this story, I think you get a better story.
Yeah, you do.
Definitely, you get a better, more well-rounded version of Wyatt Earp. If you're just, if you're not a big fan, Tombstone, yeah, definitely one for you to watch. But if you like I said, after I watched Tombstone, I want to know more about Wyatt Earp. This was pre-internet. I think you said 95, 96. That was around the same time for me, maybe 96 when I saw it. So it wasn't like I just pick up my phone and go Wyatt Earp and go to Wikipedia or wherever and read it. So I appreciate Wyatt Earp for telling a different story, but telling the same story. And like I said, Randy Quaid, I'm sorry, Dennis Quaid, I've done it. I knew I was going to do it one time tonight. Dennis Quaid, I just so underappreciated. And,
yes. I think I'll give both movies are very entertaining. I will give Wyatt Earp the nod. It gets a 10. Tombstone gets a 10 too, but I just feel if you're going with the better film, the better story, like I've said throughout this podcast, too, Wyatt Earp's that movie. Tombstone is entertaining. It's fun. Again, both movies, they have accuracy, but they also have accuracy issues as well when it comes to history. I think both films are actually accurate to how the Earp brothers, one dies and one loses his arm. Both are accurate on that. That's great, because that's the thing when you're telling. Unlike the westerns we covered before, like we covered westerns that weren't based on real life, lawmen or outlaws. With this is based on an actual person. And yes, there's entertainment value. And look, Young Guns has the same thing. It's entertainment. To me, Young Guns is probably, that's a whole nother matter. But I won't get into now. But with this, both films do a really good job trying to be true to themselves and true to the real life people.
Tombstone, and this is not intended as an insult, Tombstone is much more slick.
Yes.
And that is, to me, that would be the difference. You can throw Tombstone in. People, usually people go, "Oh yeah, Tombstone," and it's okay. You can't just throw Wyatt Earp in.
No.
And start watching it. I mean, it's kind of like Open Range. It's admitted both movies are very linear. I mean, they're jumping around like you talked about the first scene of Wyatt Earp being at the OK Corral and then kind of jumps back. But for the most part, they're both pretty linear, starting here, ending here. But Tombstone is much more slick, where Wyatt Earp, as it's showing the story of the man, it is, and not pun intended, more rough around the edges, just like Wyatt Earp, the person, was. It's not some slick, sorry, pun intended, it's not some slick storytelling. It's telling you more about the man.
Yes. Both Dennis Quaid and both Val Kilmer stole the performances. Both of them did.
It's not hard to steal a performance from Kevin Costner, though. Let's be honest. I enjoy his films, I do, and I'll throw Dances with Wolves. I enjoy all three of his big westerns. He's not a kind of actor that just draws you in like Kurt Russell is in this. There is a point at the end of Tombstone when Robert Mitchum comes back, and he's like, "The power of the cowboy gang was blah blah blah." A lot of people don't know this. Wyatt Earp, the person, and Josie lived in Los Angeles in the 2030s.
Yep.
A lot of early cowboy stars, Tom Mix and William S. Hart, became friends with Wyatt Earp.
Yeah.
And according to Tombstone, at the funeral, Tom Mix cried.
Mm-hmm.
Story, I don't know if it's true, but I love it if it is.
Yeah.
Earp was hanging around the studios. There was this young stuntman who met him. And got to know him and said if he ever got to play a cowboy, he would play it just like the way Wyatt was. It portrayed him like Wyatt was. That cowboy's name was Marion Morrison. He later became John Wayne.
Yeah.
So I've heard that story repeatedly. I don't know if it's true. I sure hope it is.
I do too.
Butch, I mean, one of the things, my sister, who, by the way, she commented on your post on Facebook, the one that said she loved Tombstone. That's my sister. She does not like John Wayne. She said, I'm paraphrasing her here, but she says he plays the same character in every movie, which he kind of does.
I liked her post.
When you're the most popular actor in America, you give the people what you want. But John Wayne is one thing that's underappreciated him. He don't take no shit. Every film you watch in, even when he's beaten down and defeated, like say in the Cowboys, he don't take no crap. And looking at John Wayne and the way he acted in films, I don't know how he was as a real person, how he acted. Watching these films, reading about Wyatt Earp, I feel like that is a true story about him meeting Wyatt Earp and learning he was going to act like Wyatt Earp, because I feel like that's Wyatt Earp. There's a book I have over here. I meant to grab it out and I forgot. They asked him one time, what is the most important thing about gunfighting? And he said, the other people are faster, but it's more important to take your time and aim.
Yeah.
I think that's an important point to point out. I mean, we're not doing a self-defense video here, but to me, that's some serious insight into the character, or excuse me, the man, rather than just Hollywood crap.
Well, too, I think when you look at John Wayne, he did aim when he was in movies. When you look at Kevin Costner, he does the same thing. He aims. Remember Open Range? He walks right up to the guy and aims at him. And I know we talked about that before, but I agree. You know, that is the most important thing, to aim. And no, we're not teaching self-defense. We're just having a conversation. It's fun. But that we agree with. So it's, to me, I prefer Wyatt Earp. I know you prefer Wyatt Earp. Yes, Tombstone's good. To Butch's sister, don't hurt me.
Hurt me.
No.
We're not hating on Tombstone. If anybody's watching this and they feel like I'm not. I mean,
no.
I'm not going to turn my camera. But right over here's a Snake Plissken figure. Here's a Snake Plissken poster.
Yep.
I've repeatedly talked about how much Wyatt or Kurt Russell is I'm a fan of his. Tombstone's just fine, but if you want more than just the legend, Wyatt Earp is definitely the film for you.
You can't go wrong with either film. Like, you know, both films are really great. I just feel when it comes to, like, if you're looking for a movie that, yes, is historically accurate, but also has accuracy issues, but really, really, really entertaining, you throw in Tombstone. But if you're looking for a complete story of Wyatt Earp that is accurate, but yes, also has accuracy issues too, you throw in Wyatt Earp. You throw in Kevin Costner's movie, and that's a movie I really enjoy. I watched it on Netflix, and I literally turned around, and after I got done watching it, I have Tombstone on DVD, and I threw that in. And my wife's like, "Is this what you're going to do all night?" I said, "I'll do the dishes too."
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. There's no hate intended on this. They're just, it's what you want. As long as you know, what we've repeatedly said, I'm not going to go into the, whatever you want, you know, this is the film this is the film for you. I can you go wrong? I don't think so. I think it would have been, I would have loved, I thought by now we'd have the technology where you could take like an actor out of a film and put another actor in. I would love to be able to go to an alternate universe where Kevin Costner was in Tombstone and Kurt Russell was in Wyatt Earp.
Yeah.
Those films, just out of curiosity, I would love to see how that went, you know.
I'd like to see, because keep in mind, in Wyatt Earp, for those who have never watched it, by the time you see Wyatt Earp in Tombstone with Kevin Costner, he has that mustache. With Wyatt Earp, he doesn't. He's young. You see him when he's a kid, even. I agree with you. That would have been really interesting to see Wyatt Earp, Kurt Russell in Wyatt Earp. You know what I said.
Allegedly, all the mustaches in both films are real.
That's what I've heard too, which is good. You want that. Is there anything you want to add before we get out of
here? I don't think so. I appreciate you letting me have a chance to watch watch Wyatt Earp again and give me an excuse for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Mrs. RosenBalm. Give Jill another shout out to Butch's wife. Huge shout out to her. Thank you so much. I'll let you pick the next Western. What do you want to do next?
I was afraid you was going to do this, and I didn't look. How about we break the big barrier and do El Dorado?
Oh, shit. Yes. Yes, John Wayne, Robert Mitchum. Yeah.
Or do you want to do Rio Bravo, El Dorado, and Rio Lobo.
I've only seen two. I've never seen Rio Lobo. I've seen the first two.
Don't waste your time. It's for those of you that don't know, it's basically the same film made 3 different times.
Yes.
When I got to Rio Lobo, John Wayne asked John Ford, "Well, do I finally get to play the drunk this time?" That would have been amazing. I would have loved to have seen it. Of course, John Ford said no. Just do El Dorado. We can do Rio Bravo later. We'll do El Dorado.
I've seen Rio Bravo and El Dorado. I actually really love the fact that in Rio Bravo, Dean Martin actually gets put in Western. Does a really good job.
Does a great job. I never really thought much of Dean as an actor, and that's probably more on me than him. You know, basically, I always play Dean Martin.
But we will.
Does a great job on that.
We will watch. We will review El Dorado. Hopefully next week. I'll get a hold of Butch on Facebook. I want to. First of all, I hope you feel better, man. Hope you get well soon.
Thanks, bud.
Sure. But man, thank you so much for coming on here and joining me. And all seriousness, thank you to Butch's wife. She is awesome.
It's a pleasure, my friend. I always appreciate it.
You have a good night, sir.
You too. Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.